Welcome to the New World Order Showcase Podcast. Your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist. Couldn't be more excited to have you join us today. On this podcast, we celebrate the champions of change, the up-and-coming life, health and transformational coaches who are fearlessly stepping forward to make a difference in the world. Get ready for inspiring stories, practical tips, and powerful moments that will motivate you to make a positive change in your life and those around you. We're happy to have you join us on this incredible journey as we dive into the world of life, health, and transformational coaches who are lighting up the path towards a better tomorrow.
Hi, and welcome to the New World Order Showcase podcast. I'm your host, Jill Hart, and with us today is Daphne Wells. She is the numerologist for leaders and your purpose and spiritual confidence alchemist. She helps midlife women rewrite the rules of business leadership to suit themselves so that they feel free at last to lead their own life and business their way, even if they thought they'd never be able to escape the box that they've been squishing themselves into up until now. I love that, Daphne.
That's so true for many of us, isn't it, Jill?
Yeah, and I wonder if we don't create those boxes ourselves and then squish ourselves into them. So not only have we done it to ourselves, we continue to trap ourselves in that situation.
Yeah, it's a mix of society, us conforming to society and society telling us how we ought to be. And it's kind of, we do, we allow ourselves to stay in there until we've had enough and want to get out.
Yeah, so tell us your story. Did you just wake up one day and realize you were a purpose and spiritual confidence coach, or is it a journey? Share with us.
Oh, it's a journey. It's a journey. Yes. I found myself. I was always a little bit rebellious and wanted to do something different as a young person, not conforming to what society expected. So I ended up being the first woman to work in shipping logistics in New Zealand back in the late 70s, when it was a totally male field. And I didn't really realise at the time what a gift that was. And then I got married and had children and gave up work, as you did back then in New Zealand. And because there was no childcare, no nothing. And I found that I was really in that box, doing not necessarily I love being a mother. However, it was there's more to life than this. And I always knew that right from when I was a little girl. And so part of exiting a marriage meant that I really had to figure out who Daphne was. And I woke up there was one particular day I realized that after a childhood of being told, well, you've got, you can do this, or this when you leave school, and you've got to get married by this age, and, you've got to have your kids by this age, and, all this sort of stuff that was society's norms back then. I realized that I had been saying to my children all along, you can be, do, and have anything you want in life, as long as you treat everyone well along the way and work hard at whatever you're doing, you're contributing to society, you're being a good person, all of those wonderful things. And there was one day I realized I've given my children this belief that they are free to have whatever they want and be and do whatever they want. And yet I didn't believe that for myself.
That's a kind of an eye-opening moment for all of us when we realize that we have all the power, but we're not using it.
We've given it away. I'm aware that I gave mine away as part of, fitting into society, being accepted. And what I came to realize was when we do that, we're actually denying parts of ourselves. And we can't ever belong anywhere else unless we belong in ourselves.
I can totally relate to that. How many children did you have? I'm just like
4.
curious. That's a good number. I had 5, but any
Well, you
any
had
more
5.
than one is like then you're really a parent because you never know who did it.
Exactly. And you times that by 4 or 5, and they're playing it off amongst each other, and yeah.
Yeah, and then you just like, my mother used to have a hair dryer, the old kind that you would put over your head like in beauty shops. Well, she had one that she had in her living room. There were 3 of us girls, and she would frequently lock us out of the house. But if she forgot to lock the door, she would be sitting under her hair dryer. She didn't really need to sit under the hair dryer, but it was noisy. So she excuse, I can't hear you. You better go solve your own problems. My mother was kind of a rebel in those ways. So
That's kind of cool.
yeah, let's get back to what it is that you're doing when you found yourself, in terms of how did you get into numerology and becoming a spiritual confidence coach, and what does that even mean?
That's a really interesting question. So to answer how I got into numerology, as part of finding myself and getting to know who Daphne is, I did a whole myriad of personality assessments, all the ones that we frequently hear about. And, the analysis would come in and I'd be like, oh, really? I don't like that. What if I'd answered that question differently? Because most of them are based on questions we answer, and without realizing, we automatically go to a scenario and answer the question. And some of them I redid and got completely different answers. And so that really didn't help me. And when I received my first numerology reading, because it's only based on your date of birth, nothing else.
Right. You can't budget.
You can't. It's not like, no disrespect to any other system, any other modality. It's what works for different people, I believe. You don't need to know the time you were born. You don't need to know any of that, just your date of birth. I remember listening to this woman sharing it with me, and I could feel myself coming home to my body, like I'd landed, like, oh, I can't question that. I've got to, accept the bits I don't like and work with them. And I realized too that my strengths are the things that were culled out of me as a child, that were squished, which is, I was highly intuitive as a child, and which is where the spiritual confidence comes in. So I'll kind of segue into that question. I was very intuitive as a kid, and I would receive all these messages and share them, and be really shut down, put down, told I was crazy, that was ridiculous, all of that. And so in amongst my journey to find out who Daphne is and really be me, rather than get out of that box and be me, I found that my intuition was coming back on again, and I was listening to it, and yet it was really a journey to trust it.
And you hear so often, no, that's wrong, or that makes you a bad person, or that's crazy, or demonic in some circles, because people will tell you that. And when you're trying to like transition back into it, our stories are not too dissimilar in that way. It's like, I trust it. Oh, please help me trust it. because you do trust it, but there's that part of you that's like that old voice that is like, nah, it's not real.
Yeah.
Even though it's like every time you do it, or every time you listen to it, it proves true. I mean, it doesn't, there's no reason not to trust it, but you just have those old.
We have these old patterns, these old stories running around in our head. And another thing I found as part of that journey too was, when I'm working with clients, I'll channel messages for them and ideas for them and everything. And that was a journey to be able to trust those to share them, because that was putting myself out there again.
Yeah. And it's kind of scary, to be that vulnerable with other people. I could see auras for a long time in my life, but I almost never told people about it because they thought it was like demonic. So, yeah. So what is your life path number? Well, we're on this.
Well, the school of numerology that I work with is Pythagorean, and so online you will see a lot of people call it a ruling number. I choose to call it a birth code because being a rebel, nothing's going to rule me. I'm a 4.
Okay, I kind of thought you were, but I wanted to. I don't know why. If I were to have guessed, I would have guessed a 4. So that's interesting. I'm a 6, just to help you out.
Yes, that would be an easy guess too. Yes. Yeah.
So you talk about soul agreements on your website, because I was over there scoping it out. And can you talk a little bit about that? What you mean by that and how it helps people, or how it reveals what their strengths are?
Love to. So the deck of playing cards that we've played with forever and a day are the book of life. We each are born with our birth code, life path as you call it, and we also are born with our birth card according to the date we were born on. And in amongst that is our soul agreement. Now, I believe that our souls are waiting for the next incarnation, and there's like a job description comes up, something that needs to happen on earth, and we raise our hand, and that's our soul agreement. And amongst that, we've chosen our date of birth, we've chosen our birth card, and amongst our birth card, like, there are so many depth layers of information in there that really help you on your way through life. So I am the Ace of Clubs, which is all about self-concept and self-belief. So no wonder that a lot of my journey has been, who is Daphne? And listening to my intuition and really trusting it, right? So my agreement then is to share that with other people, which is where that purpose, because your purpose in life is your soul agreement. Like, that's why you're here. That's what you're here to share. And I'm here to help people figure out their purpose, be confident in their spirituality, and share their I call them magical gifts with a K, because magic with a K is not pulling rabbits out of your sleeve. It's the spirit of the universe coming through you, source coming through you and sharing
consciousness. The real consciousness, which is everything.
The real consciousness, which is everything. Yes. So I always like to explain why it's spelled with a K and it's not magic tricks.
Yeah, and really, magic with a K is just science that hasn't been explained yet. It's like woo. People label things woo and then they dismiss you. It's like you're a conspiracy theorist. Okay, I've labeled you, so I don't have to pay any attention to you. But all of those labels come from someplace and they have meanings. And when you start looking at what they are, witchcraft is another term that gets tossed around, but witches were just female, for the most part, scientists and naturalists.
Actually, a real woman, really, because as you say, it is that spiritual awareness, isn't it? And that spiritual connection that a lot of people find really scary. And when we're
not.
Yes. And as you said before, a lot of people label it as being demonic because that's what we've been taught. And one of those boxes that we choose to be in or out of, right? And there's a whole realm out there, because as we know, there's only like 0.00001% of everything in the universe that we get to see, touch, and feel. Everything else is energy. And our spiritual awareness, our intuition, our connection with source, however you want to label it, our consciousness is that being aware of all of that. And so through your birth card and through a numerologist such as myself, you can really get a reading of the energy that the universe is sending to help you at any particular stage of your life journey. And that means that you are flowing with the energy and using it to support you rather than frantically working against the raging river trying to go upstream, you know?
Yeah. When I found out what my numbers were, or my number is, it suddenly gave me permission to just be me.
Mm.
Instead of trying to be this person that all of the societal pressures was trying to channel me towards. But when you're just not comfortable with being who you are, nobody else is comfortable around you because they're like, we don't know how to interact with you because you're not being who you are, and they can feel it. But
yeah, because if we don't know how to interact with ourselves, how can we expect anyone else to know how to interact with us? And that radical permission you talk about too, as I said, my strengths were what was squashed in me. So that first numerology reading alone gave me just permission to go full into those and never let anyone shut me down again, right? Yeah.
And you can just own being who you are because that's how you were created. You don't have to be anybody different. I found almost everybody that I know that knows what their birth code is or their birth number or whatever it is, that it gives them a sense of relief in knowing it. And it's not scary, it's not anything. It's not like you have to be this way. It's just a recognition of, oh yeah, I am this way. And
I am, and yet you still get a choice in how you show up because energy
absolutely.
is always on a spectrum, like a pendulum swing. You get to choose how you're showing up in the energy that's available for you each day or each moment, in fact.
Exactly. And not any, there's only 9 numbers and a 0 to begin with. So we're not talking about a whole bunch of different options, but each one is kind of, it's just a general picture. It's not like specifics, and it has positive and I don't want to say negative, but energy has an ebb and a flow to it. So there's an ebb on one side and there's a flow on the other. And they're opposites kind of in personality traits and gifts. And if you know what all of those are, you can work your life out much easier. It's like,
Absolutely.
I hate conflict, which was evidenced
Of
by
course you do. You'll do anything to keep the peace. I often talk about sixes as being love, peace, and chicken grease, and some sixes will do anything to keep the peace at the expense of themselves often.
That's not a particularly, great attribute.
No,
most of the time.
No, that's what I mean. There's finding where you want to be in the realm of possibility. And I like to talk about them as your strength and your growth edges.
Oh, I love that. I was looking for a way to.
Because I don't like using the negatives. And I also, challenges, a lot of people call them that. That sounds hard work to me. If it's a growth edge, I get to be, am I going to that edge? Am I playing there? Or am I just staying back here today? We get choice in that. And it feels more empowering.
Yeah. I like to move towards things rather than away from things. And when you're talking about a negative, you're almost always like, I don't want to be in that camp, so I've got to like avoid it at all costs rather than moving towards something that's positive in your life. And you know, stuff is what it is. And you have choices. You always have choices. Our whole life is created around us based on the choices that we make in our thoughts, in our actions, in our interactions with people.
Yes, which is a whole part of the journey, realizing that and taking ownership for where we're at in life rather than, so and so did this to me and this happened. And, life is happening for you and you're an active participant in it, unless you've given your power away, which, full confession, I did for a long time.
I did too. I made choices. I continue to make choices that, I make choices so that I can have other choices. And yeah, I think we all do on some
We
level.
do, and no decision we ever make is set in concrete. It's not forever. You can make a decision, another decision very quickly after that, another choice, right? Yeah. So the soul agreement really is, I like to look at it as your birth code, your life path, your ruling number is your personality. It's the lens you view life through. It's how you show up. Your soul agreement, which is in your birth card, is almost your job, your journey in life. It's what you've agreed to do. There's part of me that agreed to come to Earth and go through all the trauma and things that I did in my early decades, and so that I can now help people in a way that I would never have been able to if I hadn't gone through all of that, right? So my soul agreed to that.
Yes. And trauma, we all get trauma. No one
Yeah,
goes
no
through
one
life without trauma.
exactly. We just choose the variety of it in a lot of ways, don't we? And we choose how we handle it and how long we tolerate it for.
And how long we're going to be the victim of it. And it's each of us gets to make that decision, and we inflict trauma on other people. Like I know I traumatized my children, all of them. I love them to
Oh,
pieces,
I
but
have too. Yes.
you
We
just
can't help it because we are on our journey. We're doing the best we know how with what we have at the time, and I'll just say too, having come to numerology later in life, I wish that I had known what I know now when I was raising children, because I would have been so much more able to tailor my mothering to each child and their needs, really.
mm-hmm. I think it's one of those things that I wish that it was taught more openly to young parents so that they can understand who their kids are. For the longest time, I thought one of my sons was an Aquarius. I know we're talking about numerology, not astrology, but they're all kind of like in the same sort of mix. And he's a Capricorn. And I was looking at, who he's become, and I realized that, yeah, he's not an Aquarius. There's nothing about him that says Aquarius. Everything about him says Capricorn.
And it's really interesting because, even though our children may have the same birth code, they will still bring their different choices to it. And there is that's only one component of your numerology. There's a whole lot more to it, which is, why I always encourage people to have personal readings done for them by a numerologist rather than going online, because prior to me receiving that first numerology reading, I had gone online and I found it so overwhelming because it wasn't tailored for me. It wasn't precise for me. It was just very general.
It helps to have somebody who can interpret it and who's intuitive when they're sharing it with you and has a personal connection with you. So there's an element of frequency, I think, involved in this, where you're you can vibrate on the same frequency, and so you're able to receive the information better. It's like tuning in a radio station. You hear it more clearly, and so it's more easily inculcated into your life
Yes.
rather than just having it. When you look it up online, you forget it next week.
You're right, because it's not meaningful for you, is it? Because you've not received the information personally. I think there's that personal touch we crave as humans, don't we?
It's a connection thing. You connect with somebody, and because of the connection, you feel the information just as much as you hear the information.
Yes, yes, yes.
So
And
how do
it's
you
so that you do that it actually gets into you rather than staying in your head.
Mhm. It's, we talk about moving stuff into your body. Well, your body is part of who you are.
Mhm,
You have a second brain in your gut, and
mhm.
it all works together. And yet so often we've been taught in schools primarily that you just need to memorize this information and spit it back out at me, and don't think about it too hard, and don't have too many questions because I'm not going to be able to answer them for you.
Mm.
Instead of just saying, yeah, have a bunch of questions. Keep looking until you find the answer. Just be open to receiving the answer, because you will get the answer somewhere along the line.
And then you'll have more questions and get another piece of the answer, get another piece of the puzzle, right? Kind of that ongoing journey, isn't it?
It
So that we're
is.
not, yeah,
It
yeah.
makes the world so much richer. I mean,
And getting out of your head. I always talk about being in alignment,
mhm,
which for me is your head, your heart, and your soul agreeing.
mhm,
Because when they don't agree, that's when we feel overwhelmed. That's when we burn out. That's when we, get exhausted because we're trying to do it mostly, as you said, in our head, because that's the way we've been raised.
mhm. And it causes disease. When
Mm-hmm.
things aren't in harmony, then other things have to like take up the slack, and it causes stress, and it just causes you not to feel well.
Yes,
So
which
how do you actually help people with your coaching? Is it one-on-one? Is it group? Is it membership? How does all that look?
so I do have a variety of ways that people can work with me. The main way people work with me is so there's for numerology, you can always come and have individual readings, right? Some people like to do numerology with me on an ongoing basis. So we'll actually go right through, walk through their year with them, with their seasons and the divine timing cycle rhythm that works for them. And I also have my signature program, Freedom to Lead, which is a 16-week program, which helps you really step into that really powerful freedom to lead your life and your business your way. Because women do it differently to men. And it's when we do it as men, which is how society tells us to do it, that's when we get really overwhelmed and overburdened. And I believe that's why so many women, and I know I did many times, suffer adrenal fatigue and burnout. And I used to talk about the bus has got me again, and it smashed me into the brick wall at the same time, right? And would take me out.
Yeah, you just can't. We're not designed to function that way. We have a
We're not.
28-day cycle, not a 12-hour cycle.
Exactly. And so in Freedom to Lead, that is to answer your question, is that one-on-one or is it group? So there are lessons in there, and there are also calls with me, Q&A calls.
Mhm.
And of course, you can add one-on-one coaching onto that as well. So there really is a mix there to suit people with where they're at. And I always like to have a conversation with people first so that we can really work out that we are aligned and a good fit to work together.
Mhm.
Because I don't want to take money from person that is not going to benefit from working with me. That is against it. It's unethical for me.
Yeah, and I respect that. What kind of people, speaking of this, do you tend to want to work with? Where would they be, and what kind of result could they expect at the end of working with you?
So many of them are women in midlife, which, goes from around 39, 40, right, through to 65 and beyond. Numerologically, that's the middle of our life. And they're getting to that point, as you and I talked about earlier, where who am I? What am I doing? They've raised children, most of them. What am I doing now? This is my time. I don't know who I am. I don't know what to do with it. And so I help them really find out what they're going to do. The other thing that people come to me with is they're business owners, and they're really overwhelmed and over busy, and they find that they are not getting their own work done because the whole business isn't functioning as well as it could be. And so that's a whole nother different area that I work with women in. Mostly they are women in that era who are really just wanting more time to do what they love rather than working hard.
And there are so many ways to do that, but it's another one of those, we were trained that you just have to grind all the time, but it really doesn't have to be like that.
Well, in actual fact, you get better results when it's not like that.
For sure. And then you're just working with the people that you're supposed to be working with instead of trying to make everybody happy.
Yeah. And it happens really magically. Like oftentimes I'll find that clients will come to me, and when we start working together, those clients who are not right for them will just fall away, and new clients who are right will come in. And it's beautiful to watch. Because, of course, we are magnets. We attract on similar frequency, as you related to before with the radio dial, right? So we can only receive and attract what is aligned for us, what is a frequency match for us. And so as we grow and transform, what shows up in our life does too.
That kind of takes us to your offer, or your free offer for people, which is the Freedom Frequency Focus Guide. So I love how that just kind of worked its way in there. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Beautifully. Yeah, so we want freedom to do it our own way. At the base of it all, that's what so many of us want. And it does really, it takes care to define what that means for us, because it will be different for everybody. And then to really fine-tune our frequency. And once we do that, when it's aligned with our birth code and our birth card, we then are able to focus on what we need to focus on, what is going to move the needle forward, rather than doing lots of busy work that isn't actually getting you where you want to go.
The focusing on the 20% rather than the 80% that's not
exactly.
Doing anything.
And of course, the trick is to figure out what that 20% is.
And that's where you come in. You can help people figure it out.
Yes.
So how do people reach out to you? What's the best way for them to?
Easiest way is on my website, daphnewells.com, or book a free conversation, which there's buttons on there to do that too, for a consultation to see, what your key strengths are as a leader, and according to your numerology, and then we can have a conversation about how you could apply that in your life and your work.
That's wonderful. So this has been an amazing conversation. I've really enjoyed it. What is the one thing that you hope the audience takes away from our discussion today?
That you do have the freedom to be you, to lead your life and your business your way. And it's only when we step into doing that we get on the path to get what we want and be who we are here to be.
I love that. We'll leave it with that. Thank you so much for joining me, Daphne.
Thank you for having me, Jill. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another empowering episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. We hope you've enjoyed hearing from our incredible life, health, and transformational coaches who are making a profound impact on the world. Remember, change begins with you, and you have the power to transform your life and the lives of others. If you want to take that next step and unlock your true potential, visit thecoachesalchemist.com, where you can find the 3 ways we can help you for free to spin your talent into gold with clarity, a system, and a plan. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an inspiring episode. And if you enjoyed today's show, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more people with our positive message. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and upcoming guest announcements. You can find us on Facebook at the You World Order or simply visit thecoachesalchemist.com.